Hey guys, I've got chapter 4 for you today for the meanest doll in the world. So chapter 3, just a quick little recap. Annabelle and Tiffany and Auntie Sarah were coming back down from the attic stairs, and Auntie Sarah kind of lost track of time, and it ended up being a lot later than they thought it was. And they saw that Kate Palmer was awake, and in order to try to avoid her, they jumped into a backpack. Ended up getting zipped in the backpack, taken to Kate's school, and now Tiffany and Annabelle are in the school. So this is kind of the picture that we were left with yesterday. I like how they put the little arrow there as part of the background to show you where they were. I've never noticed that. They're at the school, and Tiffany has kind of convinced Annabelle that they need to go explore the school. When are they ever going to be back at school again? But Annabelle's kind of like, I don't know. She seems a little anxious about it, but she agreed. So, all right, chapter 4, the dolls at school. As Annabelle sat on the edge of the shelf and looked down to the floor, she decided that possibly this was the most afraid she had ever been. She was more afraid than when the captain, the Palmer's cat, had snatched Papa Doll and run away with him. After that, the captain had been banished to the first floor of the house. She was more afraid than when she and Tiffany, during their hunt for Papa, had decided to search the captain's bed. And she was more afraid than when, decades ago, Grandma Catherine, 6 years old, had painted Annabelle's hair green. Annabelle's hair was still green. You can see on the cover here that she's got green hair. Annabelle's hair was still green, which Annabelle didn't mind, but she had been terribly concerned that green hair might be a cause for doll state. Apparently it wasn't, but one never knew. "Come on, Annabelle," said Tiffany. She had already slid halfway down one of the straps of the backpack, and now her dangling feet hovered just an inch above Kate's coat. "Let me help you." No, said Annabelle quickly. "I can do it myself." And she did. Annabelle didn't give herself time to think about what she was doing. She didn't look down either. She just fixed her eyes on the school ceiling, gripped the strap, and hand over hand worked her way down to the end. "You did it!" cried Tiffany. "Now let go and you'll land on the coat." So this is the strap of the backpack, and there's Annabelle and Tiffany climbing down to land on the coat. Annabelle squeezed her eyes shut and let go. She felt the collar of Kate's coat beneath her feet. "Good," said Tiffany. "Now we just crawl down the coat. Here, you can grab onto the buttons." In no time, Annabelle and Tiffany had reached the bottom of Kate's coat. They were still almost a foot above the floor. "Ready, drop," said Tiffany, and she dropped, landing with a little thump. "I can't drop," exclaimed Annabelle, finally looking down. "I'll break when I land. Remember what happened when we were rescuing Papa and he had to jump on the floor? He broke his leg. Plus, how are we going to get back up later? Did you think of that?" When Annabelle was scared, she felt cranky. Sorry if you hear. I think my neighborhood will win the award for doing the most yard work all the time. There's not a time I come out here someone's not doing yard work. Tiffany glanced around. She spied a scarf lying on the floor nearby. "Okay, land on this." She dragged the scarf under Annabelle and heaped it into a little mountain. "We can use it later again to climb up to Kate's coat." "If it's still here," Annabelle muttered, but she dropped and landed safely, then slithered to the floor. Tiffany looked at her hopefully. "Okay, this is really great," admitted Annabelle. She looked all the way up the hall in one direction and all the way down it in the other. "School, Tiffany, can you believe it?" Tiffany grinned. "What should we do first?" "Let's find Kate's classroom," said Annabelle. "Maybe we can hide somewhere and watch Kate and her friends, see what they do all day in school." "Yeah, maybe we'll even learn something. Nanny would approve of that." "There's so many doors, though," said Annabelle, "one after another. There must be doors to the classrooms. But how do we know which class is Kate's?" Tiffany thought for a moment. "We don't," she said, "but we'll follow SELP rules." SELP. Annabelle hadn't thought about SELP in several months. She and Tiffany had formed SELP, the Society for Exploration and the Location of Missing Persons, shortly before Papa had disappeared in the jaws of the captain. Through SELP, they had found Papa, and then they had found Auntie Sarah in the attic, where she had been trapped for so long. But after that, Annabelle and Tiffany hadn't had much use for SELP. "Perfect," cried Annabelle. "If ever a proper exploration were needed, now was it." "We'll investigate each classroom as we come to it," said Tiffany. "If we see Kate inside, we'll look for a hiding place. If we don't see her, we'll move on to the next room. And while we're in the hallway, we should stay close to the walls. There are plenty of boots and things to hide behind if somebody comes." "Okay," said Tiffany. The nearest door was just a few feet away from where Annabelle and Tiffany had landed. They crept by shoes and boots and backpacks and book bags. When they reached the door, they peered around the corner. "Wow," Annabelle started to say, but Tiffany poked her and held her finger to her lips. Through the years, as Annabelle had listened to bedtime stories read to Kate and Annie and Catherine and Gertrude, she had heard lots of descriptions of classrooms. She expected to see a wooden desk for the teacher at the front of the room, a blackboard behind it, and 20 or 30 student desks arranged in neat rows. What she saw in this room was a teacher's desk, just as she had imagined, but the board behind it was green, and the desks for the students were grouped together in 4s and 5s to make tables. And all around the room were so many other things that Annabelle gasped as she tried to take them all in. Drawings and posters and charts and maps on the wall, an aquarium of fish, a cage labeled Ethel with a guinea pig inside, a cage labeled Echo with a parakeet inside, a shelf of books, 3 beanbag chairs, displays and art projects, and a xylophone, and plants in pots and board games and jar full of pennies. That's them looking inside the door of the classroom. That sounds like a cool classroom. Annabelle looked for so long at the things in the room that she almost forgot to look for Kate. She jumped a little when Tiffany pulled her back into the hallway and said, "I didn't see her." I didn't either," said Annabelle guiltily. Then she added, "School looks fun." Tiffany nodded. "I feel sorry for Ethel, though. I wonder how she lost her tail. I've never seen a kitten without a tail." "Ethel's a guinea pig, Tiffany." "That's a pig?" "Well, not like a pig on a farm. A guinea pig." "Never mind. I'll explain later. Come on." Annabelle and Tiffany scurried down the hall to the next door and peeked inside. This classroom looked very much like the last one, but the students in it were older. Kate was not among them, though. "Okay, next room," said Tiffany. The girls ran ahead but came to a stop when the hall suddenly widened. They saw a tall window on one side, a closed door on the other, and a large plaque on the wall that read, "Friendship, respect, trust, responsibility, kindness. We are proud of our school." These character traits kind of remind me of, at our school, over each colored hall, there's one of those character traits, so that made me think of Northside. "What is this place?" asked Tiffany. "I think it's a lobby," replied Annabelle. "There's nowhere to hide here." "But there are classrooms ahead. I can hear voices. What should we do?" Annabelle felt brave. "Run for it," she cried. The girls plunged through the lobby, relieved that the wall of coat hooks and shelves continued on the other side. They passed an open door with the words "Lost and Found" printed on it. "Remember when Kate lost her sneakers and then found them in the Lost and Found?" asked Annabelle. "I guess this is where they were." Annabelle eyed the enormous wire bin that was brimming over with hats and jackets and shoes and books and toys. "I don't know how anybody would find anything in there, though." That definitely reminds me of Northside's Lost and Found, too. "It helps to be taller," said Tiffany. No one was in the hall, so the girls continued running until they came to a classroom door. They had barely peeked inside when Annabelle gasped, grabbed Tiffany, and pulled her behind a pair of boots. "What?" exclaimed Tiffany. "Nora! Did you see her? She was playing right near the door. This must be one of the kindergarten rooms. We don't want Nora to see us at school. I think we should go back through the lobby to the other part of the school. That's where the older kids are." "Okay, but let's just check the room across the hall before we go back, just to make sure." "All right." Tiffany and Annabelle were peeping into the other classroom when Annabelle heard voices and footsteps in the hall. She looked over her shoulder. 2 grown-up humans were just inches away, and this time there was no convenient boots nearby. In a panic, Annabelle pushed Tiffany inside the classroom, and the girls scurried into the bottom shelf of a bookcase. A moment later, 4 feet stepped into the room. "Wow, I never heard them coming," whispered Tiffany. "Me neither. We have to be much more careful." Annabelle peered around the classroom. "I'm pretty sure this is another kindergarten," she said. Now, what do you know about kindergartners? If you stop and think about kindergartners, what are some things that you think of? They're younger. Their classroom's probably going to be set up a little bit differently. Just some things to think about real quick. The kids in this room looked about Nora's age, and there were no desks except for the teachers. Instead, at one end of the room were 2 long tables lined with small chairs. From another smaller table scattered about the room hung signs that said, "Our bean plants. How many is 100? Build your own city. Cooking time, and meet our goldfish." In one corner of the room was a mountain of blocks, and not far from Annabelle and Tiffany were a wooden stove, a wooden sink, a box of dressing-up clothes, a dollhouse, and quite a few dolls, large and small. Tiffany, whispered Annabelle, you don't suppose those dolls are alive? Tiffany whispered back. Oh, I hope not. Most of the dolls were not properly dressed. One had been shoved headfirst into the sink, and a girl and a boy were playing with two others in a way that looked to Annabelle to be quite uncivilized. So kindergartners can be kind of rough with their toys, huh? How are we going to get out of here? Ooh, a little fluffy. How are we going to get out of here? Annabelle asked. She turned her attention back to the adult feet nearby. As soon as the grown-ups leave, we'll leave too, said Tiffany. Okay. Annabelle crept between two books and settled in to watch the feet. She was about to tell Tiffany to hide with her when she heard a shout. Hey! Hey! Cried a girl. Look, Henry, I see a new doll! In a flash, a hand reached for the shelf and whisked Tiffany into the air. So there's Tiffany on the bookshelf, and that hand is grabbing her off the bookshelf. Annabelle slid further back between the books. She didn't let Tiffany out of her sight, though. Jenna, can I play with it? Asked Henry. It, thought Annabelle. No, I saw it. I want to play with it first. Then you can have a turn. As Annabelle watched, Jenna carried Tiffany to a small rocking chair and plopped down in it. She reached for a baby bonnet, and then, as Jenna untied the ribbons of the bonnet, Annabelle saw Tiffany pinch Jenna's arm. Tiffany pinched a kid. Annabelle's eyes widened as Jenna dropped Tiffany and stared at her, but then she shouted, Henry! Annabelle sighed and looked at the clock on the wall. 9:30. Doll State lasts 24 hours. Tiffany was going to be stuck here in this classroom in Doll State until 9:30 the next morning. Should Annabelle stay with her? Should she try to go home by herself? From her spot on the floor, Tiffany gave Annabelle a teensy wave. She wasn't in Doll State after all. Annabelle let out a great breath of air. All right, Tiffany was lucky, just plain lucky, but she had better be careful. For the rest of the morning, Annabelle watched as Henry pushed Tiffany across the floor in a plastic school bus, as two girls put Tiffany to bed in a dollhouse, as a boy tucked Tiffany in his pocket and read a book to her, and finally, as a girl with lots and lots of braids in her hair grabbed Tiffany and exclaimed, My dolly! All while Annabelle tried to think of something to do. So here's her. She's in the bus. She's playing over here. She's here. She's here. She's snatched up. She's in the bed. Poor Tiffany. Whew, she's having a rough day. At 11:20, a bell rang, and moments later, the children in the room were lining up at the door. Goodbye, said the teacher. Remember that tomorrow is show and share day. Annabelle had stood up and moved to the front of the shelf again. She peered from between the books, and she saw that the girl with the braid still clutched Tiffany in her hand. Goodbye, Mrs. Eckhart, said the girl. Goodbye, replied Miss Eckhart, and then she spied Tiffany. Sophie, you know that the toys have to stay in our classroom. Please leave the doll here. You can play with her tomorrow. Annabelle watched as Sophie ran to the dollhouse and tossed Tiffany inside, then joined the end of the line of kids and marched into the hallway. A minute later, the classroom was empty except for Mrs. Eckhart. Tiffany, lying on her back in the dollhouse, looked miles away from Annabelle. Mrs. Eckhart sat at her desk and wrote in a notebook. Annabelle wished she would leave the classroom, but she did not. And after a few more minutes, another bell rang, and soon the room was full of the afternoon kindergartners. For the next several hours, Annabelle stayed in her hiding place and kept her eye on Tiffany. The afternoon kindergartners found her almost immediately and played with her as the morning kindergartners had. When the last bell of the day rang at 2:40, the children left the room and Mrs. Eckhart left with them. Annabelle waited until the room had been quiet for 5 full minutes. Then she approached Tiffany, who was sitting on a blanket on the floor by the dollhouse. For a moment, the girls stared at one another. Finally, Annabelle said, School's over. Kate has gone home by now. I know, replied Tiffany. Annabelle wanted to cry. So they aren't going to be able to make it home the first night. They're stuck at school overnight. They're not able to get back in Kate's backpack. So I'm thinking about so many questions. Like, I wonder if Kate's going to notice Annabelle's out of the dollhouse. I wonder if Nora's going to notice Tiffany's missing. I wonder how Mama and Papa and the rest of the doll family and the Fun Crafts are feeling since they are missing and aren't coming back that evening. I wonder what day of the week it is. Is Kate coming back to school tomorrow? Or is it a Friday and she's not going to be back until Monday and that has been the whole weekend there? So many questions. But we will be back together Monday to read chapter 5 called Miss Feldman Rules. I'm not sure who Miss Feldman is, but we will find out why she rules on Monday. So I hope you guys have a great weekend. I'll see you later. Bye.